Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
As you know, we have to do this interview, and we're going to follow a protocol given to us by Dr. Omar.
Yes.
So the first question I wanted to ask you is, why did you choose Wayne State for your educational endeavors?
So I chose Wayne State because I'm not from Michigan. I'm not from the Detroit area, and so I'm learning about it. I felt like Wayne State was so central to the city. I read a lot about the involvement that Wayne State has in the Detroit community, and I felt like that was a good way for me to get an idea of like what's the pulse of Detroit, what's going on here. Because my first year here, I realized that there was a lot to figure out. So, yeah.
Good. Thank you. So what is your course of study?
So my current course of study is to complete a master's in the EER program. I'm not 100% sure. Well, I'm about 50-50 on whether that's really what I want or not. I've considered doing admin of some sort as well. In the end, I would like I see kind of a progression. I'd like to, in the near future, work in advocacy for students, for K-12 special ed students, and just any student that hasn't had things done right by them. So I'm trying to figure out what course of study is going to get me there. But right now.
Well, I like your response, and
Yeah.
I'm going to jump to the next question because I think it's important. How has your work impacted your education?
So, yeah, I mean, my work is my education. That's what drives me forward. I've never been like a go to work, do your job, forget about it, come home, have totally separate life. I've kind of always had work that was involved a lot of areas of my life. And so my working with, I've always worked at Title I schools. I've always worked with underserved populations, and then I work with special ed population, which is like a double whammy. So that just propels me forward to like thinking about, okay, how can I be better to make things better for the kids that I work with?
That's good. So how has your personal life been affected as a student, especially in EER?
Yeah. Well, so far, I mean, I'm only taking one class this semester, but it's just that like one extra thing this semester because I'm also getting married on New Year's Eve.
Oh, congratulations.
Which, thank you.
On New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
That's a couple of
That's
months
like
away.
really soon. So that's been crazy, and I'm not the person that has like planned their wedding since they were 9. Like I didn't have anything written, I didn't have any plans. So that's, and then being a student on top of that, and then we have my actual work, my school is in kind of a shift this year where we were slated for I forget what Michigan calls it, but
school improvement.
We're school improvement. We're on a school improvement plan, and so we have a new principal and a new plan and all this professional development, all this stuff, and a new building, and so it's all been a lot. So, but actually, it's been nice because this class has been the like positive, happy thing. Like when I went to the first class, I was afraid it was going to be a little stressful and I was going to have to, but I was like way calmer after the first class. And I was like, oh, okay, I like being in school. I like learning. I like developing myself as a professional. So this class is like my solace from all the other crazy stuff that's happening in my life.
Very good. So what are your future plans?
I have various future plans that are kind of coming into focus, but it's a little scary because I know what I want to do is something that I don't personally know anyone who works as an advocate. And I know that there aren't probably as many advocacy services as there should be in Detroit. Because I've never encountered one. My school in Indiana, we had child advocates come to school, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 times a year. Regardless of how well we were serving the child, a parent, feels like their needs aren't met, so they bring an advocate. And I always saw it as a positive process, but I've not seen a single advocate since I moved here. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, people are moving their kids to charter schools, and we're a charter school, and want more, and are not always happy with what we provide, but nobody brings an advocate. And I'm like, well, where are all the advocates? Where's all the, people that make things right? So
where are they?
I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Is that a movement here?
So I think there must be something different in the legal system between Indiana and Michigan. Because in Indiana, the advocacy services are state funded. So a parent can go to an advocacy organization and say, I'm worried about this, or I want someone to come with me to this meeting because I don't feel confident to speak to special ed, because most parents really don't know what it means, or what services should look like, or what their kid could be getting. And so, and I don't see that here, and I'm not sure why. That's like my big question, kind of.
And a follow-up to that, what would be the role of research? So what would be your research in advocacy?
So my research partly is in just special ed, and how what is the social construct of a learning disability anyway? Is it actually exist if it doesn't exist after the age of 18? I mean, you can bring a 504 plan with you to college, sure. But even then beyond that, your job is not going to make a whole lot of accommodations for your learning disability you were diagnosed with in 4th grade. So then what's the follow through? So that's one piece that I'm interested in. What are we working towards here? Or what could just be universal support in K-12 schools rather than just labeling a kid with a disability? Because that usually ends in lower expectations throughout school, and then lower job prospects because they didn't get what they needed in school.
Vicious cycle.
So there's a whole bunch of things like that.
So one more question. How does your culture affect your study? And I'm not sure if that's culture as in work culture. Is that ethnic culture? How would you interpret that? I
interpret it as ethnic culture because coming from just about the whitest community you can come from in Indiana. I mean, it just was. One of the
it's so funny because I've heard you say that before. Yeah. And that's I appreciate your candidness and being from such a white culture, because I grew up in an all-white culture, being the only brown person.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you said that.
And I did it.
Self-identify as being.
Well, because I graduated from high school. There were 430-some kids in my class. 2.5 African-American kids, maybe 10 Hispanic kids, and then there was a family of Vietnamese kids that were all cousins and kind of related.
And that was it?
And that was it. That was it. I mean, it's one of the wealthiest counties in Indiana. And so, I don't know, I guess that's just how that goes. White, middle class, very homogeneous. I grew up the same as all the people I went to school with. It was we all had shared experience.
Did you know that?
Had no idea.
At the time, you did not realize that.
No, I didn't. Well, my first encounter was we went downtown. There was a video game place at the top of the mall downtown Indianapolis for my brother's birthday. And we're going up an escalator, and I was I'm an observer. I don't talk much, but I listen and just take in. Well, these boys who couldn't have been much older than me were coming down the escalator, and they were urban black boys. And it was just, I don't know, I must have given them a weird look. But I was probably just taking them in. The kid told me, F you, as he passed me on the escalator, and I was like, wait.
What just happened?
I'm in 6th grade, and I've not even said that word. I've heard it before, and we've said, the F word. But
So it was blatant and it
Yeah.
was real in your face.
And I was like, oh, it like, that's what I remember. Yeah. And so then when I got to college, I pursued, because I went to Indiana University. So big, you know, state school, not as much diversity as there could be, but more than I grew up with for sure. And I took more classes that were diverse. And then as I got into education, like the world literature class I took was an African American literature class, because I was like, I have to get somewhere out here. And so I knew I had to search out, like, me as a white female, which is what all the teachers are and not all the kids are. So that was something I, like, not struggled with, because that makes it sound bad, but just had to, like, kind of work through in college to know that I'm, like, your stereotypical white girl that's coming in, like, that's what the teaching force looks like. That doesn't always reach Black and brown kids. And so how do we, like...
How many teachers think that way? I mean, you know, since there is predominantly white females,
Yeah.
how many of them do you think are actually cognizant that they're this stereotype teacher?
Yeah.
And do they understand that connection, that the people that they're teaching or the kids that they're teaching they don't look like that?
Yeah.
Do people, is that
It's hard to say, because in my program, and the program I was in was called Teaching All Learners, so it was a dual special ed, elementary ed program. So I was getting both licenses.
Okay.
And it was a cohort. There were 40 people in my cohort, and we had the same classes all the way through. And so we got into more multicultural education, and we had to talk about it, and we did some urban education. We went up to Indianapolis one day a week for a whole semester so that we could be, you know, in schools that were not all white and not, you know, the majority culture that we grew up with. But so I know IU, at least in my program, did a good job of at least starting the conversation with us. Not that we were totally prepared to deal with it or to figure out how to reach multicultural students or bring in books that were relevant to whatever kids were in our classroom, but it at least opened the door and made us talk about it and think about it first. But I don't know. I don't know how much, because some of the teachers that I work with now, I'm like,
that's what I was thinking. That's what I'm like. I know some teachers
like,
that
you
probably
don't see that
their mind is not even open to that. So
Yeah.
that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.